Hello, before we start, I want to point something out that's on the answer key. So let me scroll down the document just like you will. Over here on the answer key, do you see where I have it highlighted? We're talking about imaginary numbers today. These are all imaginary complex operations. But you need to know that I is equal to the square root of -1. So I squared, if you square both sides, I squared is -1 itself. So you're going to see that as you go through operations. Also, if you look on your calculator at second decimal, you'll see I. If you put I squared in there, you'll see a -1. I squared is equal to -1. So now let's go back up to the top and go through some examples. I have both your notes and examples on this same document, so I want to see both of those with you. Do these notes with me. We have some addition and subtraction problems. I'll do 1, I'll do 3, you'll do 2, you'll do 4. On number 1, to add. When we add complex numbers, we match up the real parts with the imaginary parts and simply add. That gives us -1 plus 8, which is 7, 2i plus -6i, -4i. That's your final answer. It's that simple. When we subtract, we do the same thing. We match up the real parts, 3 minus -4. We match up the imaginary parts, 8i minus -3i. So to subtract, just be careful with it. 3 minus -4 is 7, and 8i minus -3i gives us 11i. So take a minute and do numbers 2 and 4 just like we did there. When we multiply, you might want to pause and go down. When we multiply, we distribute, we double distribute, whatever that may be. So I have some multiplication problems here. On numbers 5 and 6, it's simply that I distribute 8i into both of these, and I distribute 5i into both of those, and simplify. If you remember, now we're going to see those I squareds, what I told you over here. I squared is equal to -1, so I need you to be careful. Oops, let me pull that back down. So when we're distributing, I'll do number 5, you do number 6. I'm going to do 8i times -5 and 8i times -6i. That gives me -40i. Okay, that's fine to have in my answer, but also minus 48i squared. Wherever you see an I squared, remember, I squared is equal to -1. So if I squared is -1 and it's times -48, that really gives me an answer of plus 48. So my whole answer altogether is positive 48 and then minus the 40i that I got to begin with. That is my simplified answer. So you try number 6. Now in number 7, we're looking at multiplying, but doing double distribution or foiling. I need to take -2 times everything in that set of parentheses and -5i times everything in that set of parentheses. That gives me quite a few terms to multiply out. So -2 times everything, doing -2 times both of those, that gives me 8 minus 8i. And then -5i times both of these gives me positive 20i, -20i squared. So once again, I've got this I squared, hold on, got this I squared that I need to simplify. That's really positive 20. To collect like terms for my final answer, my 8 goes with my 20, and I get 28. My -8i goes with my 20i, and I get plus 12i. And that's my final answer. You do number 8, you're going to do it the same way. The bottom part has division. Now the problem with the division is that we have an I, which is the square root, in the denominator. And for all of these, I'll do one with you, you do the others. For all of them, you need to multiply by the conjugate. The conjugate of the denominator is just the opposite. The conjugate of negative 5i is positive 5i. The conjugate of negative 10i is positive 10i. The conjugate of 2i is negative 2i. The conjugate of negative 3i is positive 3i. I need to multiply both the numerator and denominator. I'm going to do 11 with you. By the conjugate of the denominator, by 5i, both top and bottom. But what that gives me then is a problem that I need to distribute up in the numerator and in the denominator, multiply and simplify. In the numerator, that gives me 10i minus 35i squared. In the denominator, I get negative 25i squared. Notice you have an I squared on both of those. Those both need to be simplified. This becomes positive 35 and this becomes positive 25. Now my fraction is 10i plus 35 over 25. Notice that you have in 10, 35, and 25, all three parts are divisible by 5. You need to reduce that fraction if that's the case. If all three parts are divisible by the same factor, do it. And what do we get? Well, if you divide that by 5, you get 2i. Divide that by 5, you get 7. And divide that by 5, you get 5. That gives me a final answer then of 2i plus 7 over 5. So I want you, what you need to do is to finish out all three of those. And that's your assignment for both Wednesday and Thursday.